Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. Looking outside, it is a bright day and I'm excited about it. That always puts me in a good mood. I appreciate everybody putting comments into the chat and engaging in the chat and bringing the energy. I like it when other people bring the energy as well. It fires me up, but it also fires up the other folks coming into the session we got today. So I got a lot of good stuff for you today. We're going to be diving into the federal agency relationships I really want you to be paying attention to in developing. But before we do, I wanted to just give you a quick tip for the day. Just to get started, I like to start off by a little thank you gift for you showing up early and on time. We have well over 100 people showing up early, so that's always great. LinkedIn puts the word out to others saying, hey, you're late, come on in. So here's my tip for you. As you do any sales out there, and today I'm going to be talking about relationships, etc. But as you do any sales, what I want you to remember is that 50% of the people you reach out to, they're not going to respond. You contact 100 people, 50 people will not respond. Keep that in mind, and it puts things in perspective. When you don't get 50 people responding out of 100, you're like, that's all right, that's what it is. Now, the same thing holds true in the next level. When people respond, 50% of the people who respond aren't going to want to meet with you. It's just not a good fit, and that's no problem, right? That's no big deal. But you want to put it in perspective. Sales is a numbers game. You have to have a certain amount of people you're reaching out to before eventually you don't need to be reaching out to as many because you've got really good strategic relationships in place. But it takes time to get to that stage of having relationships in place. Good, strong strategic relationships in place. And so as you just do your sales activity, as you go into today's training where we're going to be talking about agency relationships, just remember, some will, some won't, so what, right? It's a good way to keep ourselves motivated as we move forward. All right, that was just a quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. It's always great to see you. I appreciate it when you engage in chat. I come back afterwards to try to engage with you after the training. Sometimes it might take me a couple of days to get back because there's just so much, but let's get rocking and rolling. Let me pull up my slides so I got them from me, and then I'll share them with you in a second. In government contracting, if you've been in this business a long enough time, you're going to hear somebody say to you that relationships are key, right? Success in federal government contracting requires that you have relationships. And I remember when I was a government contractor for so many years, people used to say that. Now I'm good with the relationships, but still you would wonder, well, how do I get those relationships? Which relationships are important? And that's what we're going to talk about today. That's what I want to dive into is as you build relationships and as people like me say, hey, you need to build relationships, I want to be able to give you the specifics of that. What relationships are you trying to build? What are the roles that people are in? What are they trying to get done, et cetera? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about it from an agency. Even though I said federal agency relationships, I'm going to cover federal agency personnel themselves as well as industry, right? Because industry is really an intimate part or an equal part, if you will, in government contracting. And so it's important for us to just understand, though, that as you move forward and we're building these relationships, that there's people are in different roles, and I want you to understand those roles. And so today I'm going to help you understand what those roles are, what those people do for their job, and then a little bit of how you touch base with them. I have a lot of other training on that. So again, we'll be diving into 3 must-have relationships. And the way I'm going to break up this training for today is in 3 sections, right? The first thing I want you to do is to understand the 3 types of relationships. In sales, people fall into one of 3 roles, and we'll talk about those 3 roles so you understand them. When you understand them, then you'll begin to understand the people you're trying to reach out to and talk to and realize you don't talk to them all the same way. The second thing we're going to cover down on are the 3 agency relationships you want to be building. So in there, I'm going to talk about the 3 key roles that people fill, and this is a little different than the 3 types of relationships. These are 3 specific job titles, if you will. And then going into the 3rd section of today's training, we're going to be talking about industry relationships you should be building. I just want to give you 8 ideas of people you should be talking to. Literally this week, I was able to make an introduction between one of my customers and another business in the industry where they're going to be able to get a subcontract, probably get 2 or 3 full-time billable people on it. And when you look at the title of the person I introduced them to, it's one of those 8. when you know the titles in the industry of the people who can best help you achieve your goals, then it makes it so much easier for you to do outreach and to begin to call them, et cetera. So in that third section, I really want to talk to you about the industry relationships you want to build. One thing I would like to see you put into the chat for me is just tell me which agency you're targeting. I'm going to talk to you about the agency relationships, right? Federal agency relationships you should be building, but I'm curious on what agencies you're targeting. So just let me know. It's also a good way for those of you who are in here. We got about 150 people in here in today's training. It allows you to be able to see others who are going after the Army or Department of Education, et cetera. So put that in the chat. And by the way, don't put a lot of agencies. When you put a lot of agencies, it makes us feel like you're not really targeting any. But if you put one agency, just put your top agency, even if you're going after a couple. What's your most important agency? Put that in. That way you're most likely to be meeting other people who are also going after that. So put your target agency into the chat or comments. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And I got to pause for 1 second because for some reason I'm not seeing my slides. I just want to make sure you are. Good. Anyways, A to Z, repeatable, predictable results. That's what I want for you. So we're going to be diving into that today on relationships, which lead to those predictable results for you. When you have relationships, you hear about opportunities. Those are the things that begin to get you started. If you haven't already done so, do me a favor, go ahead and put into the, not put into the chat, register for our subscribe to our newsletter, right? It's the GovCon Success newsletter. We put a lot of good information in there, agency strategies, agency points of contact, et cetera. I like putting in content around how to do business with an agency, and it's not generic. It really goes into how to get in the door and start hearing about opportunities. So subscribe to the newsletter and register for training. If you go into the chat and you scroll to the top, you should see a link that I put in there for tomorrow's training about rapid RFI, a rapid RFI response process. That's tomorrow's training. I'd love to have you register for the training. When you register for training, and you're just letting us know you're coming, and it's a simple thank you, which we appreciate. Okay, so let's dive into training because I got a lot of good stuff I want to talk to you about. And so in today's training, we're talking about building federal agency relationships, in particular in industry. But one of the things to keep in mind is all of your customers, the relationships you'll build fall into three categories. These categories are focus of receptivity, focus of dissatisfaction, and focus of power. And these come from a book called Mass Sales from Neil Rackman. And maybe somebody could put it in. I was looking around. Major Account Sales Strategy is the name of the book. Major Account Sales Strategy. So if you want to go in and really do a deep dive on this. But the idea is when you're going into a customer, in this case, a federal agency, when you're going into a customer, you want to understand who the people are and what you should be asking them and how they might be able to help you achieve that ultimate sale you want, right? You're not selling them right away, but understanding what you would talk to them about. So focuses of receptivity are people who are willing to help you navigate their organization. They'll talk to you about their agency, they'll make introductions, et cetera. They don't have any need, they don't buy anything, they're not the ones who have the need for solving challenges, et cetera, and they're not the ones who have the ability to give you money. But they are willing to help you navigate, and they are willing to make those introductions. And so we call them receptivity, focuses of receptivity, because they're receptive to hearing from you and helping you. The second group is called focuses of dissatisfaction. These are the people with the need, right? These are the people who have a challenge or a problem that needs to be addressed and fixed. These are the people, when you talk to them and you're going through sales questions, you can explore that problem that they have, and you can understand how that problem is impacting the rest of the organization. So if an IT department has a problem, it's not just their problem. Everybody else is impacted. I don't know if you were online yesterday, but LinkedIn had a huge crash. And I never went back to see what was happening. But LinkedIn had a problem. Their whole network, their whole platform went down. But it wasn't just LinkedIn, right? It was all of us who then were impacted by that problem. And these are implications. And so when you talk to a focus of dissatisfaction, you're hearing about those challenges and problems. They also are the people who have the goals and the objectives, new things we want. We want new features, or we want new products, et cetera. We decided we want to get new machines in our agency to do our job. Whatever it is, they have the challenges and pain points, and they have the goals and objectives, the new things they want. And so they're literally, to me, the buyer. Even though the next group, the focus of power, is the one who signs the paycheck, the one where you make the sale is with the focus of dissatisfaction. That's the hardest one to get to in federal sales, and that's the one you want to get to. I've done a lot of training on that, how you can get to them, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. The third group, after focus of receptivity and focus of dissatisfaction, are the focus of power. The focus of power is literally the person who has the money and can sign the contract with you or decide to work with you, right? So industry, it's not so much they're signing a contract, they're just agreeing to teaming. And in an agency, they're signing a contract. But a focus of power has a different set of criteria in their mind when they talk to you, a different set of questions you might be asking them. With them, you're trying to talk to them about the acquisition approach, right? How they're buying, what they should be considering from a buying perspective. I was just talking to somebody today about this American Sign Language, but I noticed inside this RFP that it had these two different certifications, and my customer was saying how one was a little older than the other. While focuses of power are the ones where you try to chop some of that stuff out, and you're eliminating maybe some of your competition and coming in. Well, that's focus of power. The people who have that ultimate contract language type power to be able to change it, modify it, as well as sign the contract and award it to you. So everybody falls into one of these three categories. When you're reaching into an agency, think about these three groups. You want to find somebody from each one of these three groups. And I'll give you examples in a minute. And as you move forward, when you have people in these three groups, then you can look at an opportunity that's in your pipeline and know that it's going to be able to move forward because you're able to explore new things with a focus of receptivity. You're able to explore challenges and needs with a focus of dissatisfaction. And you're able to explore how you can win that contract, get that contract signed with the focus of power. So I'm going to break up 3 slides for federal agency relationships into that focus of receptivity, dissatisfaction, and power. And we'll start with the focus of receptivity within an agency. And so I just put it here in 3 different types of people, job titles, et cetera, that you could find in this. So the first one, hopefully you already know this, right? It's the small business professional at any given agency. And there are a lot of them depending on the size of the agency. I have customers going out to the Navy, and so they have about 150 small business professionals in there. They have different titles, but basically they're small business professionals. And they're federal government employees, right? They're not me or somebody like me on the industry. These are government employees whose job is to be a liaison, pretty much, with the small business industry and the internal customers to an agency. And so you want to reach out and find the small business professional. The second one and this is a broader group, is the OSDBU office, the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization. It's pronounced OSDBU. And I put down the OSDBU director, though, because these guys aren't helpful at all for your pipeline. They're helpful for moving things forward. So if you're not getting traction with the small business professional or with anybody, you can go right back up to the OSDBU and say, I'm not getting traction. Can you or somebody in your office help? And they might often reach down to a small business professional and say, hey, can you meet with Sally? Sure. And so they can kind of kickstart it. They're great for moving things forward. They're a focus of receptivity. They're not a focus of power, no matter how high their job title is, right? And so that's an OSDBU director. Inside the OSDBU shop, and in the in the defense side, they're called the Office of Small Business Programs, which doesn't make any sense to me. It should be OSDBU, but it's a sidebar. So either way, though, the Office of Small Business Programs or OSDBU, that's the same thing, basically. Those folks generally are about policy and really about engaging small business within the government to address the government's needs. But often you can go into those offices and you'll find specific small business professionals who are not the small business specialist that works on opportunities, but these ones are focused more on how are we engaging women-owned small businesses in our agency? How are we engaging service disabled or 8A or HubZone within our business? And so when you go in to a website, you should be able to find these people's names. By the way, if you look at the red box over to the right, I'm telling you, go to my website, www.govconchamber.com, and you can download the free Federal Small Business Professionals directory right off our website. It's over 1,000 names of small business professionals, and all of these people are small business professionals one way or another. Over 1,000 names for most of the agencies in the federal market. So it's a great resource, great way to get in and talk to people at the agency of your choice. The last one I really want you to pay attention to are the SBA's, the Small Business Administration's Procurement Center Representatives. So the SBA's PCR. These people, they're not going to work with you as much as the small business professional, but they are basically, in my words, a liaison between industry or an oversight on an agency, and they monitor multiple agencies. They have a large responsibility on their plate, but they do oversight to make sure any opportunity that could go small does go small and it doesn't go full and open. So theoretically, the idea is that any agency that's going to push something to full and open has to go through the PCR. And I don't need to get into the technical part of it. What I need you to do is to understand they even exist. Whenever I work with customers and I'm working on their pipeline, I have a field that is points of contact for this opportunity. And I always require that we have a small business professional in there, a contract professional in there, and a PCR in there. Even if I'm not going to call the PCR, I should know who it is for every single opportunity. That way, when I do need to call them, I can. So these PCRs are great if you don't know who the small business professional is in an agency. They might be able to help you, just give you a list of small business professionals that they're engaged with. They also talk to contract officers and others within an agency. So these are great people to have on your list. They don't have any need and they don't have any power. They do have the ability to help you, just similar to the OSDBU, of maybe greasing the skids, if you will, to make things happen if you're hitting a roadblock. So the first of the agency relationships are the focuses of receptivity. Remember to download that directory. The second one is focus of satisfaction. And hopefully you understand this already and you've been tracking, but this is the program office personnel. And there's three types of people you can find: people in leadership roles, people in management roles, and worker bees. And I'm going to take a risk here to just sit there and say, generally, leadership roles are SES type folks. Management is GS 14, 15 type level, and worker bees are everybody else. And sometimes you can be a worker bee if you're a manager and a leader. My point is to understand there's a hierarchy within the government, within your buyer, right? And to understand who they are. So an example I'll give you is one of my customers was the White House, so the executive office of the president. When I was in there, I worked with the CIO. That's leadership, right? I also worked with their branch chief, or division chief, excuse me. And the division chief related to the software development type stuff we were doing. And then they had branch chiefs under them. When you are targeting an agency, just understand their hierarchy. I can't say how every agency is done out there, but fundamentally, you can find branch chiefs under division chiefs under senior leadership, right? And you want to get in and begin to find them. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing construction or IT or other professional services, et cetera. It's the same kind of structure. Somebody's in charge. They got some direct reports and they got a whole bunch of people on their team. If you look at a program executive office that many, especially I target a lot of DoD program executive offices, they have a program executive office, meaning this group of projects and these major initiatives or projects that are underneath. And so you've got leadership and folks working on the PEO level. And then each one of these projects have their own teams. And some of these projects are so big that they break down into hierarchy. And so you want to get in and talk to these program office personnel because they're the ones with the need. They have the need, things that are going wrong or things that they want to accomplish, right? There's a lot of stuff that the government is trying to get done over the next 5 years, 10 years, beginning to understand who's got the long range vision of that is the program office. Talk to the program office. You'll be able to talk about what you know and you'll be able to engage them. The focus of receptivity and the focus of power, they don't know about really those long range needs and goals. And so you want to get in there and talk to these people. The next group is for the federal agency relationships. This is focus of power. These are the people who are going to sign the contract, right? So really only the contracting officer is the one who's going to sign a contract. They've got the power and they get in trouble if they do something wrong on it, right? So contracting officer has the ultimate power in the federal government for your contracts. The program office has the need. They're the ones you want to talk to. You want to explore the technical scope or requirements of what they're doing. But the contracting officer is the power. And I'll give you another quick example on that same White House contract I had. I did a whole video a while back on they wanted to give me a contract, $5 million contract that I just said no to. And I said no to it on September 30th, the end of a fiscal year. And this is where I really came to believe the difference between focus of dissatisfaction and focus of power. The reason I said no, from a very quick story, is that the program office was trying to dictate some of what we do. But one of the things I try to teach small businesses, the government is not an expert at what I do. I'm an expert at what I do. My colleagues are experts at what we do. We do Microsoft SharePoint is what we were doing then. They are an expert at going to war or doing education or cleaning up the environment or whatever. That's their expertise. Their expertise is not ours. And the program office was trying to tell me how we were supposed to do it. And I went back to the contracting officer and I said, look, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking that risk of signing a contract, being forced to do it their way, which is wrong. And then we get blamed or penalized. And she told me, she goes, look, they don't get a say in it. They can only send me the requirements. It's between you and me. I'm the last, the buck stops with me, literally, right? So the power stops with me. I sign the contract. You and I agree on these requirements. I hold you accountable to this. They can't make up this other stuff. And when you've been in long enough, you'll understand that this is the way government contracting is, and it's great, is that the contracting officer makes sure that you're locking down the details of the requirement and you sign it with them. And that's what makes them the power, is you're doing a contract between your company and them, not all these other people. All these other people have some sort of influence and say, but they're not the power. So inside that group, though, together with the contracting officer, I just wanted to put in 3 others for you to pay attention to. Contract specialist, in my eyes, is almost as important and almost as powerful as the contracting officer. They're not going to sign it, but they work closely with the contracting officer side by side. There is no real discrepancy, right? So they work very closely. When somebody works that closely, then they have a level of power, right? That office has the power. And so really, it's the office of the contract officer, if you will. I'm just making up that title. But the contract specialist is often the one you see on SAM or in other places where they're engaging with industry while the contracting officer is doing something in the background on their activity. So you really want to track on that title, contract specialist. The other one is contracting officer or contract officer representative, CORE. We used to call them COTARs, contracting officer technical representative. And the idea is, theoretically, these people know more about the requirements of a contract, and so they work together with the contracting officer. Sometimes these people are in the contracting shop, and sometimes they're in the program office, right? And they're a lot more engaged. But you just want to know who that is and begin to build relationships with cores around the work you're trying to pursue. And the last person I really want you to understand is the head of contract activities. Any agency that you're going after, you should know who the head of contracting activities are. And then there could be multiple, right? Depending on their responsibilities and how it's delegated. You want to know who they are. First off, they're a supervisor. So you want to be able to always have a path to escalation. If you're not getting the traction you want to know who you can escalate to. And escalation in the government's not a bad thing. Be polite, be professional, you're fine. But knowing who that person is really helpful. The other thing is they potentially know about a lot of different opportunities. And so you want to be building a relationship with them, even at a high level, right? You're not going to have weekly or monthly meetings with them, but even just so that you're aware of them and maybe they're aware of you. So these are the 3 relationships I really want you to pay attention to. In industry, it's a little different. And I put down 8 people that you should be paying attention to. Whenever I'm trying to go into a particular agency, I obviously look at the agency and I try to find those 3 focus, receptivity, dissatisfaction, and power type people, right? In the agency, government personnel. But I also look for companies that are winning in the agency I want to get into. And I might want to build relationships so that we can team together. Sometimes I just want to build relationships so I can work with them and share information back and forth. Whatever it is, these people are some of the best ones in the industry for you to connect with. So the first one that I put down are small business owners. For all small businesses out there, you generally still have pretty easy access to the owner. I know multiple companies. I work with customers who are graduating small to large as we speak, right? In 24, 23, 24, 25. And as they're graduating, all of these owners are accessible, right? And their information is most often in DSPS. And I have a whole separate training of how do you find these people, how do you get their name, number, and emails, et cetera. So make sure you watch the previous training. But you want to find small business owners because even if they don't work directly with you, they can put you right in touch with their team. And their team, begins with 2, 3, and 4 here, where it's, and this can be small or largest now. In industry, you want to find people who have got titles like business developer, capture manager, proposal manager. Those 3 types of people are great because they're the ones, when you build a relationship with them and you start talking to them, you can hear about opportunities. You can decide, hey, should we come together? I just made an introduction today between a fairly large small business to a $1 billion business. And when I did, I was trying to teach them as well. I'm like, look who I'm introducing you to. This is a business developer at this $1 billion firm. Understanding who those large business developers are at your target agency are really helpful for going out there. If you're too small and you're just getting started in government contracting, don't knock on a large business door, knock on small business doors, but these same titles are really helpful. The other thing I like about 2, 3, and 4 is all of these people care about teaming, right? So if you're interested in getting on a team or finding people to get on your team, all 3 of these groups of people would be interested in those conversations. And the only thing you remember is what I said early on, if you got here early, that 50% of the people you reach out to won't even get back to you. That's totally cool. But the 50 that you do, you can begin to find the companies that you can build those relationships with when you pursue business developers, capture managers, or proposal managers. Number 5 is for large businesses. Large businesses generally have a supplier diversity type person in there. Most common title is Small Business Liaison Officer or SBLO. Remember that directory I said a minute ago where you can download it for to get agency small business professionals. We also have all the SBLOs we know of, and I think that's over 100 different companies, the largest companies. We have that in that directory as well. But these small business liaison officers are there to try to find small businesses that might be able to support the large primes need. And so you want to find them, get on the internet, go to events. When you talk to the government, say, hey, who's the SBLOs that work most in here? They will tell you. These people are not really hard to find, and they're fairly easy to talk to. Number 6 is, and this is the 6, 7, and 8 are also large businesses. And I put this in. When you're reaching out to large businesses, one of my favorite people to reach out to are program managers. Very hard to find them sometimes, but when you do, it's perfect. So 2 types of program managers. One is the one who's a program manager for a contract that has been awarded to a company, a large prime, right? So there's a program manager who's running that contract and who's got all these extra responsibilities. Inside of their team, they have a contract administrator to make sure that's going good. There might be various titles, but contract administrator and a subcontract administrator, making sure that their subcontract plans are going right and that they're building the right supplier base they need. 6, 7, and 8, though, also apply to contract vehicles. If you go into a large prime, you can find a large contract vehicle like Oasis, let's say, and you can find in there that large primes will list out for that contract vehicle who the program manager is, who the contract administrator is, and if you're lucky, who the subcontract administrator is. And if you're not lucky, you just ask the program manager, hey, who's the subcontract administrator? But this ability to build a relationship with large primes who have these huge contract vehicles, your ability to build and perhaps get on those contracts begins with reaching out to program managers, contract administrators, and subcontract administrators. So here's 8 different groups of people, and I highly encourage you to just look down and go, am I reaching out? Am I actually building relationships? Or am I just casually seeing them networking events and not really doing anything to develop that relationship? So here's what I want you to remember from today's training and some next steps you can take. First thing I would recommend is look at your pipeline, right? And again, I don't care if your pipeline's a spreadsheet or a fancy tool or Microsoft SharePoint CRM like we've built. The idea is to look at your pipeline and look at the opportunities you have. For each one of them, the second thing I want you to do is ask yourself, do I have a focus of receptivity, a focus of dissatisfaction, and a focus of power listed for every single one? That would fundamentally be Small Business Pro, Program Office, and Contract Office, right? You want to make sure you have one of each for those opportunities. Otherwise, you're missing out to people like me who have one of each of those, and you're not really having as many conversations as you could have. The third thing is go watch my training. Like I said, I've got a lot of training. I've done over 425 in the last 2 years. And many of my trainings are around how do you build relationships, right? How do you find the people? How do you get a meeting? How do you build the relationship once you're in? I do all of the how for you. So go check out that training. If you're doing $2 million or more, and you're interested in a BD Accelerator workshop, love to have you in our workshop. We're starting our new cohort soon. Just go to govconchamber.com, check that out. And for all of us, as you move through the day, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.